Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips. I am your host, Professor Side. That's my actual job title and last name, which is part of the reason why the mathematical model that I've built to predict various sports outcomes is affectionately known as Sideline. You'll hear more about the model during the course of this episode, set to cover the 6 best college basketball games and a semi off the wall game, not as deep into the wells we've been going at times. Scheduled to be played on Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. In case you're new, check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. See the Google Sheet for sidelines projections on every single game. Model also has a graded pick on all games because there are no locks in gambling. Sideline parses picks into 3 categories: loves, likes, and leans. That is A, B, and C grades. There are 2 different ways to get the picks, either via Patreon or Black Book Sports. Mostly just depends on what you're looking for. Hopefully we have a package built for your needs, whether that's early access to model projections, ad-free shows, instant access to picks, and or the Discord chat, which is the best place to get questions answered about these or other games. Don't forget the results for all recommended picks. The ones here in this show, the Model A grade plays, and all of the plays of the day can be found on Black Book Sports and the Google Sheet. All of the links, again, in the show description. As always, take what you like and leave the rest. Lastly, please understand the good and bad variance will occur. So as much as we'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, you were recording this here on Tuesday afternoon. None of the Tuesday games have happened. We have had the Monday games happen. And I feel like Monday, so we talked about this a little bit in the Discord chat. Again, a lot of good discussion over there about sports and now tennis and NFL and everything. So it's a lot of fun if you're not there with us. But Monday was a frustrating day because there were so many weird things happening, so many close results that it's hard to really learn a lot from them, right? The Iowa State collapse, the Virginia Syracuse, we had the over in that and it was flying over and then somehow doesn't get there. Baylor's hanging around to the very end and then that could have easily gone over. It goes under. Baylor could have won. They lost. It could have covered. They didn't. There's just so many of those games on Monday. And there weren't that many games, but it felt like about half of them were just kind of these results where you just look back and you're like, I don't know what to make of this. And I feel like that's the most frustrating nights as a sports bettor, because at least if you lose and you learn, that's something good. But I feel like I didn't learn anything Monday. I don't know about you.
Yeah, or if there's a specific reason that you can point to and makes you feel better, right? Like, oh, so-and-so got hurt. That really changed that game. Or something like that. It's just, I don't know what happened to Iowa State. I quit watching it because I was like, man, they're up 5 million. I got that kind of offense. Apparently, they do. So it's like, I don't know. And then the Baylor game, that was a good game. It could have gone either way.
It was a great game.
And then was it North Carolina Central? The one combo of free throws at the end is what.
Yeah, I did the video TikTok about that, about a bad beat. That was terrible. And the Baylor one, I think we kind of, both Baylor and the Virginia game, I feel like we nailed in our discussion of them, right? I said Virginia -5 is a very good line. And sure enough, Virginia wins by 5. And we talked about that number being a tough one to kind of analyze. It's exactly where it falls. The Baylor one, we analyzed, right? We kind of just said Baylor might be slightly better team, but on the road. And sure enough, after 39 minutes, Texas was 1 point better at home. I think that kind of aligns with what we said, but we talked about it's very tough because you didn't know how that last minute would go and you didn't. And Baylor had a chance to take the lead, misses, and then ends up losing by 5. And so I feel like that's the other frustrating thing too. I feel like we had the handicap and nailed it perfectly, but that doesn't necessarily always translate to winning bets. You feel like it should, but when it doesn't, it's what do you do? And of course, like you said, the Tech Iowa State game, I had my eye on that a little bit. It seemed like a lot of Iowa State turnovers, but I think the question is, how do you really learn from that going forward? Because I don't expect them to be ahead by 20 points in the second half on the road in conference often. That's not a spot they usually find themselves in. So it's maybe next time if that happens, I know not to turn away, but what do you do with that? That was everything went about as well as it could have for them for the first 25, 30 minutes of that game. And then who knows, right? Again, it's just a wonky night.
Yeah, it was wild, very frustrating just to watch the games we had as wins turn into losses real quick.
Yeah, and that sort of thing happens, right? We always talk about it. It's college basketball is a different kind of grind than the other main sport we do here, which is baseball. But every season in baseball, I feel like I always talk about this. There's always these weird stretches where everything you hit everything you play hits, and you have these stretches where like you just can't find any luck, and you just never know. I always told people in baseball season, right? If we've had 2 losing days in a row, doesn't mean the next one will be a winner or a loser. If we've had 2 winning days in a row, doesn't mean the next will be a winner or a loser. You just never know with these swings. It's just this grind of trying to get the combination of smart picks and good luck, and you need a little bit of both. And, I think we had the right reads, just didn't get any luck. Hopefully we continue to have the right reads. If you have the right reads, that'll be good. Sometimes you don't have the right reads. You're just like, well, it doesn't really matter if I get good luck. I had the wrong read, right? So hopefully we can at least keep the right reads going, and then the luck will come around, right?
Yeah, at least it's better than kind of better than having the wrong read and the right luck. And then you keep making the same mistake.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, we got a bunch of really good games here for Wednesday, but before we get to that slate, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and if you turn on notifications, you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. I've already mentioned Patreon, but check it out if you haven't yet. There are a lot of great benefits to be found over there above and beyond what we do here. Only $3 a month. It gets you the play of the day each and every morning. For another $2 a month, you get access to all the model picks and the Discord chat. And for $5 more a month, you get ad-free shows and immediate access to every recommended pick. Go to www.patreon.com/pickswiththeprofessor for more details. But even if you're not there, we're still thrilled to have you here. Remember, sports are unpredictable, so the discussion we have on the show is projecting a typical game, not trying to forecast a game to a T. That would be a foolish and impossible goal because nobody can predict when a team's going to have a 23-point lead and then fall apart. Still better. Let's get to it, though. Remember to always shop around for the best price. Sign up, link in the show description, add a couple more books to your repertoire. We're going to start off here at 5:30 p.m. Central. Penn State at Purdue, the rematch of a game that was a quasi-neutral site game where Penn State played they don't annually do it. Every so often they play a game at Penn Stadium. They got a lot of alum and a lot of players who are from the Pennsylvania area, so it was a lot of fun for them. It didn't go well for Penn State the first time. They hung around in that first half. Jake, I'm curious if this was your read on it. It was kind of a standalone game, so I feel like most of us were probably watching. It felt like that UConn Butler game the first time around where it felt like Penn State was hanging around, but I was watching it and I was like, I don't really know how they're doing. I mean, they just hit a bunch of jump shots and it just seemed like after that first half, it was kind of like, hey, they're hanging in there. This is going to be a good game. I don't really know how they're doing it, but it's working. And then the second half happened. And that felt a lot like that UConn Butler first game. And then when UConn Butler played the rematch, the same thing happened. And I kind of think that's what's going to happen here. I just don't really see Penn State hanging in there. The problem is it's a 10-point spread. So I don't really want to lay 10 with Purdue, but I also don't want to take 10 with Penn State. So we're going to stick to the under 135.5. If Penn State doesn't hit all those crazy jump shots, there's no way that this game can get to that number. Purdue's got a really good defense. Penn State, offensively on the road, you expect to struggle a little bit more. So under is the play that we're going to make on this one. Jake, tell us more.
Yeah, like the Penn State team's all or nothing, right? Like very, very similar to the Butler team where they're very jump shot driven. They're a smaller team. They like their jump shots, but they're a lot better in Butler especially in the fact that they're the best team in the nation at not turning it over. But if the jump shot doesn't go in, they don't stand a chance of getting it. They don't even want it. I think at this point, they've just said, we're not even going to try for it. They rarely get to the line because that's part of the jump shot thing. When your team's not aggressive, you're not getting to the line because you're trying to find that open jump shot. You're pretty good at shooting the 3-ball, but Purdue loves to absolutely play slow. And so Penn State really does play slow too. Yeah. But the difference is Purdue has 80. And I mean, you're going to say that a lot and you're going to hear that a lot, especially come tournament time. But
I mean, hands down national player of the year, and it's not even close. It's a runaway. So I feel like we're not breaking any news, but we also can't not say that. I mean, we would be not doing our due diligence if we didn't mention that, right? that he changes the game. Like, he really does. I know it's not news, but also it's kind of important to keep in mind, right?
And that's really going to be the difference between these two teams, right? Is if Purdue's jump shots aren't going for 2 or 3 trips down the court, they can go, okay, we're just going to give it to Edey. He will put 2 on the board. That way we can get out of the scoring slump where Penn State doesn't have that. Also, Edey will clean up almost every miss. So when they do miss the jump shots, because Purdue tends to miss a lot of them where they're at right now, he gets a lot of points that way too. And playing slow, I think, is to Purdue's advantage. So if you're Penn State might try to speed it up to stay in this game, that's going to not go well for them because that's not how they're used to playing. But they play slow. That lets one, 80 save his legs, two, gets their defense set, and that's harder to go against that half-court set defense than it is taking advantage of open fast breaks. And there's just not going to be a ton of fast breaks because neither team likes to turn the ball over. But, I mean, if you look at the first game, like you mentioned, Penn State hung right in there. I think they scored, what did we say, 44 in the first half?
Something crazy.
And then 20, and it was 26 in the second half. Like, I think it's going to look a lot more like the second half game because I think Purdue is a lot better team right now than where Penn State's at. We're just not going to get a lot of points, and we're going to and Purdue might run away with it. I don't want to lay the 10 because they make me nervous, but Purdue unders have been pretty good to us.
Yeah, and the model says 135 points for this total. Has been pretty spot on with Penn State totals, but it's been still overestimating Purdue. They've just been more of an under team here in conference play. We've talked about Purdue's, some of their offensive struggles, and when you combine Purdue still not looking great for the most part on the offensive end, they can still get the job done. They have a great defense, but when they're playing slow and they're not scoring, at a great clip, you combine that with Penn State on the road, who's got a good offense, but again, on the road, it hurts a little bit. That under makes a lot of sense. The last thing I want to say here, I do really think that there are situations where the matchup really matters, and you never obviously know how one individual game is going to play out, but I do really have to think watching that last game that the style of defense that Purdue is playing is just going to force Penn State. They want to take those jump shots anyway, but force them. It seemed like they were just forced into a bunch of tough jump shots, and that's where I like the under because I'll take my chances with if they're taking tough jump shots, they might go in. But in general, I like my odds, and a lot of them don't. And there's a lot of ways we can get under a number that's this close to 140 in a game that just should go at a snail's pace, more or less. Like you said, Penn State, in theory, might try to speed it up against Purdue, but also that's not what they do. So it's not going to go better for them. So it puts them in an uncomfortable spot. So if they speed it up, it's not like I think that's going to make a lot of points happen. And Purdue is going to be a hard team to speed up because they're going to do everything they can to keep it slower like they want. So under 135.5 is the play there. Another 5:30 p.m. Central game to keep your eye on, Providence at Xavier. You're going to treat this one like you did the TCU game yesterday, though. You'll notice no pick on the screen there. Obviously, that is because Fremantle out for Xavier. First game out. Has a lot of questions now what that's going to do to Xavier. The analytics just love this Xavier team, partially because of the fact that they've got some decent wins, and all their losses are to solid teams and mostly close. What does that mean? In general, that means that they're probably pretty decent, but how does that translate now with Fremantle out? There's just a lot of questions here with this Xavier team. Providence finally looks healthy again. So they've got a better chance here. The injury bug, at least in this game, has flipped from what we would have expected a week ago or 2 weeks ago coming into this one. Xavier's a 3-point favorite. The model does say 5.2, but really is not knowing what to do with the Fremantle situation. He's obviously very good. The best players in college basketball tend to only be worth 4 or 5 points, but you just never know when a guy is going to completely change how the team plays. So just a lot of questions in the air on this one. We think it's a game that you want to be watching, but also maybe just learn a little bit about how Xavier's going to play now, tempo-wise, and just are they going to be able to fill in that production? Obviously, one game isn't going to tell us the full story, but it's going to give us a whole lot more data than we have right now, which is not very much. Jake, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, look, they had a chance to do it with Xavier in that Creighton game where they both guys got in foul trouble. Fremantle had a great game, led the team scoring to 18. It's hard to tell how he changes their offense because Nungy likes to stay out and about where Fremantle is more inside. Is how they kind of drew because he's the leading rebounder. He's that more physical presence where Nungy really stretches the floor and likes to block shots and stuff. So it really changes. I want to see how much that changes their defense and things. And then Providence being healthy, could be a bad combo for Xavier, or it could be great. Because who knows? So just one of the ones I want to sit and watch. I want to see what they do because this could really tell you what they're going to do with the guys getting foul trouble and how they switch the offensive game plan and defensive game plan. So it's should be a great one to watch, but not one I'm on any part of.
Yeah, thankfully Fremantle sounds like we'll be back for March Madness, probably the Big East tournament. That's the hope, the expectation. It's obviously good news. for them. I'm with you. I really want to see how this plays out. I can see a world where Xavier wins this game by 5 points and everyone just says Fremantle's a good player, but it's a team game and it's not like he's being replaced with you and me, right? The guys that are replacing him are still pretty dang good. They aren't as good, right? But they're not that far behind. And it's one of those that the guy who's 90% as good takes a few minutes and the guy who's 80% as good as that guy takes a few minutes and everybody just trickles down. So it doesn't affect Xavier can win this game. They're at home, right? I could see a world where Providence goes on the road and wins this game by 10. I mean, I kind of can see a lot of different things happening here. So just not a game really to invest in our opinion. Xavier getting a 3-point favorite right now. Total is 155. I think we were talking about this beforehand. If we had to, we'd lean over. But again, just not sure if Xavier is now a little thinner, going to try to slow the pace down. We think Providence healthier might speed it up, but there's just a lot of question marks. So we would kind of lean on that over, but it's not a pick that we're comfortable making as an official pick. And over that we are comfortable making, 6 p.m. Central, Pittsburgh at North Carolina. We're going to go over 146.5. Model says 148.5. Been pretty spot on with the totals of both of these teams. Bottom line is you got decent pace. It should be pretty average on the pace, not really too fast, not really too slow, but you got two really good offenses that should have a pretty good advantage over the defenses. This is a game that on average, based off of the type of scoring that we've seen in college basketball this year, tends to be more like in the 150s than in the mid 140s. So we think 146.5 is too low. We like going over here. Jake, tell us more.
Yeah, like this is going to be, I think this will be a very key game for ACC play because I think, if I remember correctly, the top 4 seeds get a double bye for the ACC tournament, and these teams are going to be fighting for that third, fourth seed there. So this could be big. Pittsburgh, one of the most confusing teams. I mean, I was dogging them early in the year, and now they're seem to be really good. Especially once I think Langley, something like that, the big guy that just decided to opt out of this year after he got hurt again and came into the year hurt. This is when he opted out. I thought we could bury Pittsburgh. Nope, they are right back in playing. I mean, North Carolina went through their tough stretch, and I mean, as much as it pains me to say, but they are one of the more dangerous teams out there right now.
They're starting to finally look like maybe they're going to put it together and be that team we thought they were at the beginning of the season. They were so disappointing for so long, and they're starting to play a little better now.
Yeah, just like last year, it's frightening because they were in the championship game last year with pretty much the same team. Yeah. Like this, and I mean, neither team's going to turn the ball over. But I think North Carolina plays at a faster pace, and I think Pittsburgh is going to match that pace. So I think this game is going to have a little more pace than what the metrics will tell you. Pittsburgh's got 2, and I say guards, but just because Burton, I think Henson is more of a guard. He's listed as a forward, but I think he plays more of a guard. But so the 2 really strong guards, they got Henson and Burton. They've got a deeper rotation in North Carolina, and I think they'll like that pace. Like with RJ Davis being probable, and I know something in his face. I can't remember what his injury was, but I think he'll be pretty much at full speed playing this game. And I mean, Baycott. North Carolina's not a great 3-point shooting team, but you don't need to be when you got Bacon underneath the rim, and he is very, very good player, and he can be very dominant. And I'm not sure Pittsburgh has a guy that can bang with him. So I think there's going to be a lot of points and just a really intense, really physical game, much like the end of that Miami game where there was a lot of points right there at the end. And I think that's going to happen and push this one a lot closer to like 150, 155 than this 146.5.
Yeah, Pittsburgh kind of on the bubble, it looks like at this point. So, not a likely game to win. They're, 8.5, 9-point underdogs. It's about where the model has it. Seems like a pretty good price. If they can accidentally get a win, that would be huge for their tournament chances. Obviously, North Carolina, doesn't want to lose, but they're probably more okay in the tournament, more so than Pittsburgh is. Pittsburgh's the one who needs
a little more solid footing.
But it should be an interesting game there. Question is, can North Carolina really run away at home? We don't want to mess with the side. We think that 8 to 9 point spread's pretty solid. So instead, we're just going to go over 146. Going to flip to the under here on a 6 p.m. game, Tennessee at Florida. The number we got here is 131.5. Sideline says 127. Has been underestimating Tennessee totals, overestimating Florida totals, potentially that Tennessee one a little bit, like we talked about, that Texas game thrown in there, and we talked about how that was just a very different type of game. But in general, that should balance out. I really think this game's going to have a hard time getting towards 130, just given the strength of the Tennessee defense. And again, Florida, just the way they've been playing for the most part here as of late, just really been a strong under team. really slowing things down, playing solid defense. It's not a big number, obviously 131.5, but we still think that it should be a lot lower than that. So we're going to go under in this one. Spread is 5.5 to 6. Sideline says 7.5. If we had to play it, we'd lay it with Tennessee. It's a tougher spot, though. I just, in general, my thought process here is like laying 6 on the road is always a little bit of a scary thing because it does mean you are the better team, but there's a lot of ways that they can just win, escape with the victory. They don't care if they win by 6. They don't care if they win by 7. They win by 3, they're happy. They win by 2, they're happy. They win by 4, they're happy. So it's just a tougher play to lay the 6. It's probably the side I'd rather be on. Tennessee's are just a really good team, but it's just too uncomfortable on the road to lay the 6. So we're going to stick to the under 131.5. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, like major defensive battle here. The under's the right play. I mean, you've got the nation's top defense versus the number 8 defense. It's not a lot of offense that's going to happen. That's not very easily. I mean, neither offense is deadly. Tennessee's offense just disappears at time. Florida really doesn't have one. Neither one is great 3-point shooting teams. Tennessee's shown flashes of it, but it's nothing I would count on. I know this new lineup, they're playing a little bit faster when they play the small ball, but I don't think that's not going to work out too well with Castleton. So I think you're going to see a more slower game with the bigger lineups in because Castleton can step out and move around. Florida's offense doesn't do well against very good defenses that have big guys, right? They scored 50 against Kansas State, 52 against Texas A&M, 61 against Mississippi State. Still didn't crack 70 against LSU, and LSU's not that good. I mean, that list can go on and on. Like you've got 54 against UConn, 53 against Oklahoma. And Tennessee really doesn't break 75 that much. They're 10 times on the year, and most of those were teams that – and you're like 150 to 200 to 300s. They're not going to get that hot. I think this game is screaming everything about the 120s. Anything under 130 is a great play.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think back to that Kansas State game on Saturday, and Kansas State's got a much better offense than Tennessee, plays with a little bit more urgency, and not anywhere near – not that Kansas State's defense is terrible, but it's nowhere near Tennessee's defense, obviously. And that game had 114 points in it. I don't think it'll be quite that low. I think that was a little bit of an aberration, of course. We always talk about games coming from distributions and all the possibilities, and we only see one realization. We sometimes see a weird realization. That one was a little bit weird that it only got to 114. But, yeah, I'm with you. It just seems really unlikely that these two teams combined, like what would happen to get the scoring up? It would be some weird, all of a sudden they both decide to start playing fast, and we just haven't seen that, or teams just get hot. And it's possible, but it just will require something that I'm like, I just don't have much evidence to think we're going to get into the mid 130s, which would be what an overplay would imply. I think this game's going to have a really, really hard time getting to 130. I'm like you, something in the 120s makes the most sense. Shifting to the 8 p.m. time slot, Oklahoma State at Oklahoma. We're going to lay the 3 with the Sooners. In general, a lot of times I would say you beat a team like Alabama the way you beat them, letdown spot. This is a rivalry. I don't think there's a letdown spot here. They're going to be really focused. On top of that, they know they need every single win possible to keep their tournament hopes alive. We always talk about how good the Big 12 is. Those top 6 are incredibly good. And then that bottom 4 are the ones that are all just trying to figure out how they can get up to be number 7. Number 7's probably in. Number 8, maybe, right? Number 9, number 10 ain't going to make it, right? And right now, Oklahoma's really got to take care of business here, win this game, solidify their spot as the 7th best team in this conference, get in the tournament. So I don't really see any letdown here. I think they're the better team here. Oklahoma State just doesn't really impress me. Oklahoma has always had that potential, and for so long this year just didn't seem to quite have it together. I think they maybe are putting it together here. I'm not saying that they can compete with the top 6 in the conference, because that's 6 of the best teams in the country, right? 6 of the top 15 probably. But I think they're starting to put it together for them, which means it's still a pretty good team. I think they can get the job done here. We've been pretty, spot on with these teams here, but I will say we're 5-1 backing Oklahoma, 9-6 when we faded them. So we've done well backing them, done well fading them. We're going to lay the 3 with the Sooners. The total is about 130. We would go under, but it's just a low number to go under in a game that's a rivalry game. Nobody's going to take their foot off the gas at the end. Could be late fouls, desperation. If one team gets hot, and these teams can do that, as opposed to that Tennessee-Florida game where, again, it's not that it's impossible, but it's a little bit more of a stretch to see the Tennessee or Florida teams getting hot. We've seen these teams just go through like 5-minute stretches where they just, hit 6 threes or something. Something like that would get you over 130. So under's probably the smarter play, but it's just not a high enough number for us to want to jump on. Instead, we're just going to focus on backing the Sooners at -3. Jake, tell us more.
Yeah, look, this is a fun matchup. You mentioned the letdown from Alabama. I don't think that's going to matter because you've got the rivalry, plus you've got a revenge factor, and it being at home. So it's still a little more comfort, like a little easier to get your mind right, a little more routine. And I just don't think Oklahoma State's offense is going to get hot enough again to beat Oklahoma because they got real hot and really put it on Oklahoma. And I don't think that's happening again. Both these teams absolutely struggle in turnovers, and they're both great at guarding the three-point arc. So I think that leans towards your under because I don't think you're going to get as many threes as you did last time. Oklahoma's offense is better, and that's enough to make the difference up with their defensive difference. Especially at home, they're very good. They're much better shooting team, and especially from the free throw line. They've also got 2 studs in Sherfield and Groves, but Jalen Hill is the big third X factor, and I think that's why they win the game. He's a much, much better player at home. He hits 43.8% of his threes at home compared to 26 on the road, 92, almost 93% of his free throws compared to 78 on the road. He's just a lot more comfortable at home. He just put up 28 against Alabama, which is a very, very good defense. I think he might stay hot, and I think that's going to be the difference in between these games.
Yeah, last time out, Oklahoma State won by 16 in a game that had 128 points. Again, like I said, they were on fire in the second half. They were losing at the half. So I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to make any predictions based on the first game. All I'm doing is pointing out Oklahoma had the lead on the road at the half. So they can play with this team, absolutely. Now at home, they're rightfully favored, right? That second half, OSU just could not miss. Can it happen again? Absolutely. But in general, that's not what we expect to happen. And even with all that scoring, and there was a bunch of late scoring, a bunch of late fouling, OU was down 13 fouling, right, which got it to 128 even. So again, that's why we've talked about the under. But if OU didn't go quite as cold in that second half, the game probably gets more into like 133, 134. So again, just a little bit of a fear of it getting there. Under is probably the right play. We're just going to focus on the Sooners here. Don't think that second half repeats itself and that OU at home can win probably pretty handily, kind of separate themselves out in the second half of the game. To the late slot, 9:30 p.m. Central, New Mexico at Utah State. Got a double up for you here. The screen is wrong. I typed that in wrong. So we got New Mexico. We're going to get New Mexico +4, and we're going to go over 154.5. I mean, we love this Lobos team, right? We've been backing them all year. We are 13-6 backing. We did fade them once and won that game. The model says this should be Utah State by 3.5, but has been overestimating Utah State here for the last month. So if that's the correct, direction that it's going, then really it's probably should be more like Utah State -3, -2.5, something like that, which kind of makes sense here in that I'm just not convinced that Utah State's the better team. And if they are, I'm just not sure by how much. It's by the smallest of margins. If they are, I think this New Mexico team is just as good, can hang right in there with them. They live in altitude, so it's not like that the game being at Utah State is going to affect them from an altitude standpoint, which is something you got to consider sometimes with these Mountain West teams in the travel spots. So we're going to grab the 4 there with the Lobos. Also going to go over 154.5. Model says 157 and has been underestimating both these teams here over the last month. They both just been scoring like crazy, and the numbers like creeping up, and the teams just keep scoring more. And so it's one of those where it's like the numbers just going up, but just not fast enough. I mean, really think it's got a good chance to get into the 160s here. Again, given the model projects 157, doesn't tend to project numbers quite that high too often. But you got 2 just incredible offenses, and teams that are going to play with a little bit of tempo here, especially New Mexico, should get us a lot of points. You think New Mexico could hang around, maybe get the win. +4 is just too tempting, as is that over 154.5. Jake, what do you got for us?
Yeah, this should be just a fun game. It'd be all the points are going to be scored in this game in just completely different ways. I mean, New Mexico is a 3-point adverse team. Only 27.5% of their shots on the year come from behind the arc. But they do hit them at a high rate. They hit them at about 35%. So it's obviously a game plan, but I mean,
well, they're being selective. I think a lot of times it's good ball movement, and if it's open, we're going to take it, and if not, we're not going to force it. We're going to try to drive, pass through, and do something else, right? So I mean, it's being selective.
Yeah, they play at this very fast pace. They don't make too many mistakes. They find tons of open shots. They've got a very high effective field goal percentage, and they're one of the better teams at not getting their shot blocked, which means as they get to the hole, they're making the right decision. They're pulling up for the jump shot or going reverse layup, whatever, avoiding shot blockers. Utah State, complete opposite. They play at a little bit of a slower pace. They want all the threes. I mean, why not? When you're hitting 40% as a team, shoot them all. They work very well to find those open shots to move the ball around. They find an open three, and almost everybody on that team can hit them. I think the quicker pace of New Mexico will get Utah playing a little faster, maybe shoot those threes a little earlier than they want to. That might start to be the difference in the game. But it's kind of interesting from a defensive perspective because New Mexico's defense, exceptionally guarding the three-point arc, one of the best in the country. Their defense is designed to make you kind of shoot the threes, and that's kind of what Utah State wants to play. So I don't know what's going to happen there. And then Utah State wants to chase you off the three-point line, get you inside, and make your shots hard there. And that's what New Mexico wants to do. They want to get inside. So it's a very interesting game from a strategic standpoint, everything. So it should just be a lot of fun to watch. Worth staying up late to see. But I mean, there's just going to be a lot of fun. And in these tight games like this, giving the team that's getting closer to the bucket closer to the bucket with the plus points. That's where I want from the side. I think there'll be a ton of points.
Yep, absolutely. Last thing I'll mention here with regards to total is we've seen a lot of these Mountain West games be close contest, get a lot of late fouls. We've seen a lot of overtimes as well. So this game could easily get you to 160 with a couple minutes to go. If not, if it just happens to slow down, teams aren't hitting. Sometimes you see some slower, more deliberate second halves. If we see that, we still got a chance for this over with overtime. So I think it's not impossible, but it seems unlikely that either team's going to run away one by 15 and just rock this one to bed. It seems like it should be a good close contest with a lot of points. And again, just so many different ways to go over here. Love this over pick, which takes us to overtime segment here. We're going to go with a game not quite as off the wall as some of the ones we're going to talk about, just not as big as those other ones. Villanova at Marquette, a game that at a different time in the world would have been a fantastic game. This Marquette team, if you just put them against one of many Villanova teams in the past decade, would be, but this Villanova team just not as good. We're going to go with a double up overtime slot here. We're going to go Marquette minus 8.5. We're going to go over 143.5. The model says that this total should be 147, has been pretty spot on with Villanova totals, but just cannot catch up on Marquette. They've been scoring a ton. It's a little bit tempo related, a little bit getting turnovers, possessions, and a little bit that offense is just insanely good and they cannot be slowed down. And so we're just playing catch up on this over. I don't think they've caught up. I don't think my model's caught up. I don't think anybody's catching up yet. I think this is more likely to be around 150 than 140. So we're going to go over 143.5. We're going to lay the 8.5 with Marquette. Model says it should be Marquette minus 11. Listen, we faded Marquette 16 times this year, and it has not gone well. 4-12 fading them. So I am happy to be on the other side of that, given the fact that Marquette has been insanely good. We faded Villanova 14 times, gone 9-4. So it's gone well when we faded Villanova. It has not gone well when we faded Marquette. That seems like an easy choice to me. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of this Marquette team. Their offense just keeps getting better and getting better and getting better. They've moved up to the number one efficiency offense in all of basketball. They play at a high pace. They've got the number 2 effective field goal percentage, which means they're finding all the open shots and making sure they find them. They don't turn the ball over, which has typically been a problem with Shaka Smart's teams. They play too fast, turn the ball over a little bit, and he's okay with that because he's forcing turnovers on the other side. Since they're not turning the ball over and forcing turnovers, they're getting tons of extra possessions, putting up all the points. I mean, inside the arc, they're shooting 61% on the year, which is just insane kind of numbers. This Villanova team, I know if you look at the first game, Marquette won by 2, and it was a lower scoring game. They still forced, 13, 14 turnovers out of Villanova. I think at home, where this Marquette offense is now, is going to be a completely different story. I know there's some questionable guys tonight for Marquette, but I think they'll play if at all possible, and that team is deep and loaded, and they'll take advantage of this Villanova team that seems to be flailing around trying to figure out how to play defense. That's not what you want to do against this Marquette team right now.
Yeah, we've seen Villanova have some success against teams that want to play faster by slowing them down. But I think those have been more so the teams like St. John's, who St. John's isn't a bad team, but they just aren't the quality of this Marquette team. That's what we always talk about. A team wanting to slow the other team down, a team wanting to speed the other team up, but also not just do they want to, but can they? Villanova isn't that far behind talent-wise of St. John's, so they were able to slow them down and really get them out of their game plan. They are behind this Marquette team. This Marquette team is really good, and they might want to slow them down, but it's just not going to be something that we think they're going to have a lot of success doing. And so when Marquette starts scoring like crazy, like we think they do, either Marquette's just going to run away with it, or Villanova's going to have to try to pick up the pace a little bit. Villanova's been scoring, so they should be able to score a little bit. Just unlikely that they hang around with Marquette. So we're thinking a lot of points from Marquette here, and that gets us a cover and an over. And that's all we've got for you then today. Jake, any parting words for the viewer?
No, I'm just going to be sweating out this Tuesday night slate. I really like it, and I can't wait to just sit my butt on the couch and watch it.
It is the worst part about recording now is that it's good because now we're recording and then we get to go watch the games. The downside is we have no idea how it's going, and everyone else watching this, like, they know and we don't. We are in the dark right now as to how Tuesday has gone. So hopefully it's gone well for everybody.
Hopefully it did what Monday did in the first half and just stay there instead of just the floor dropping out.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can enjoy all the sports betting content provided on this channel. It's dropped right into your feed. Be back again with more sports betting tips tomorrow. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.